Good afternoon, everyone.
Good
Hello, am I audible?
afternoon.
Yeah, good
Yeah, yeah,
afternoon,
audible. Good
everyone.
afternoon.
Yeah, a very warm welcome to you all. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Okay, my name is Ananya Das, as you can see here. So, this webinar is conducted by Auditors. So, let me tell me about what is Auditors and what it all about. So, Auditors is the leading provider under technology and service based on artificial intelligence, SAP, IoT, blockchain, web applications, mobile applications, digital marketing, which addresses the complex business needs and also helps in business in many ways. And also, Auditors helps in contributing with the best solution in the utility sector, IT and service sector, advertisement sector, social and entrepreneurship sector, outsourcing and educational training in both online and offline sector. To transform and thrive in a changing world. Like everything is just changing. So according to that, Urtis is going accordingly to it. So what is our today's topic? We are going to present on emergence and proliferation of electronics and automotive sector, presented by Mr. Aniket Atul Katikar sir. He worked in Technocut with varied experience and various domains such as semiconductor manufacturing, electronic design automations, automotive system, and software development. Having a combined experience over 7 years, I guess, yes, and being in automotive domain last 5 years. Coming on today's webinar in this new era, automotive electronics technologies such as autonomous driving and all electric cars are the new trends in the automotive industry. Everything is just changing accordingly to time. Like the market is very dynamic in nature, everything is just changing. So according to that, the automotive sector, automobile sector is going according to it. So Sir is gonna tell about today's webinar. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any question during the webinar, please type in the chat box. I will bring them during the webinar and we will also have the discussion at the end. Okay, so further wasting any time, Sir Aniket, sir, just please start today's session, sir. Please.
Okay. Thanks, Ananya, first of all, for such an impressive introduction. Hi, all friends and fellow learners from the automotive fraternity. Uh, I'm still evolving, so I consider myself as a student of the automotive electronics domain. In order to evolve in a better professional and a better technocrat, one needs to keep himself open to new ideas and new learnings as well. So I'm trying to keep myself in pace with this philosophy. I hope in current situation you all are safe, staying at home, and your family members are also safe. On that note, maybe we can start. Just let me know if my presentation is visible to you all, and am I
Yes,
audible
sir.
correctly?
Yes, sir. You are loud and clear, and the presentation is also visible.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the emergence and the proliferation of electronics in the automotive sector. The title is self-suggestive that in today's automotive sector, there is an increasing demand and increasing implementation of electronic components in many ways. Earlier, we had some conventional vehicles. Prior to that, we had some manually driven vehicles such as bicycles, which were manually powered. Now we slowly migrated towards the fuel driven vehicles, and now we are seeing tremendous growth in slightly automated applications, and we are hopeful that it is going to be there in further times as well. So the mankind first invented the wheel. In order to understand that where exactly we are standing today, we need to understand where it all started. Somebody invented the wheel. Some person thought that vehicle platform can be built around that wheel in order to travel from point A to point B. Now here I should say that the necessity drives the innovation, and I also feel that lazy people tend to be more innovative, because lazy people are always trying to find some jugaad by putting in less efforts and getting some more output out of it. So it's my opinion. On a lighter note, jokes apart, we can move ahead. After the invention of the wheel, maybe animals were used to pull the vehicle platform, which further evolved into the manually powered vehicles such as bicycle. We had to pedal the bicycle, then we can travel from point A to point B. That further evolved into power plant driven motorcycles or four wheelers. So these are fuel driven vehicles, we can say. In between, we had a brief stint with electric vehicles as well, but that did not last, as there was not mature technology at that point of time, some 60 to 70 years back. But now that time has came back. So now we have seen that what path we have traversed and where we are today. We can see that what is the typical vehicle architecture looks like, which is available in today's passenger vehicles. So the vehicle platform is built around the tires, having brake assemblies, steering assemblies, gearbox, powertrain is there, transmission is there, clutch lets the vehicle drive by transferring power to the wheels by engaging and disengaging it with the powertrain. Suspension assembly is there. So this is the typical vehicle architecture we can see over here. There is nothing fancy about it. In this slide, you can see over here, the platform has started to mature. It has started to evolve in some way. Here, as you can see, the amber colored systems fall under advanced driver assist classification. The blue colored ones are powertrain and chassis applications. Green ones are the body and comfort applications. And gray are driver information and connectivity applications. So this vehicle is full with electronic applications, such as front radar for adaptive cruise control, which itself is a pretty complex feature from the implementation perspective, though conceptually it sounds a little easy. Then we have a basic powertrain application, engine cooling fan, oil, fuel, water pump, engine control with electronics application, which is engine management system, emergency brake systems are there, power control for windows is there, infotainment is there. Nowadays, there is no more only entertainment in the car. It is coupled with some critical vehicle related information. That is why it is called infotainment. It can be projected on the instrument cluster. It can be projected on head unit, which is another separate display, or it can be the heads up display as well, which can be separately integrated, and only critical information can be projected over it. Another feature could be seat control. The entire pressure monitoring system is a part of body and comfort. This increasing electronics implementation calls for better communication within electronic control units and components. This requires mature communication buses and protocols. Just to name a few, we have some automotive communication protocols such as CAN, Controller Area Network, LIN, FlexRay, most which are used for media specific applications. And we have some more at the board level, which are I2C, inter-IC communication, and serial peripheral interfaces as well, SPI. Some of the ADAS features are here mentioned. You can see smart rear camera. Suspension is again part of conventional application. Interior lighting, which is again a fancy feature, we can say. It can be implemented in many interesting ways based on the user input, or based on the season, or based on the time of the day in which we are driving. Then we have some ADAS, which are ADAS features which are crossing over some safety criteria as well, which is front view camera system. We have a comfort feature over here for HVAC. There is a blind spot detection, which again overlaps over two categories such as ADAS and safety. And as I was saying, that there are multiple displays in today's typical automotive applications. So far, we are clear?
Yes, sir.
Any
Yes, sir.
any thoughts on what can be another interesting application we can have in a vehicle? Any wild thought will be welcome. Maybe I can think of one. Just now I was reading on this particular slide, there is a seat control over here. Now we know that there are some interesting possibilities with this seat control as to how we can implement it in multiple scenarios. If the same vehicle is being driven by multiple family members, let's say one vehicle each family, if we consider, then father may drive the same vehicle, son may drive the same vehicle, or daughter may drive the same vehicle. So the multiple seating profiles and seating arrangements can be pre-stored in the seat control ECU. And whenever that specific person is about to drive the vehicle, accordingly the seat height adjustment, then reclining, or some armrest adjustments can be done. Another interesting scenario pops up here for seat control application could be when the driver opens up the door and tries to enter into the vehicle. The seat can be slightly reclined back and it can be pushed back slightly as a welcoming gesture to the driver. It is a small implementation, but it can go a far way to fetch the consumer attention, and the driver may feel connected to the vehicle. Now we have seen in the previous slide that to what extent electronics has penetrated in how many automotive systems. Now we need to understand that what exactly is driving it, what are the reasons. First and foremost reason is the government regulations. We have a government regulating agencies which are primary stakeholders. They define the requirements, they define the policies, and automotive OEMs, manufacturers, and suppliers, they need to comply with those regulations and mandates within specific stipulated time period. So how that can be done? That can be done with performance enhancements, that can be done with precise control operations of existing automotive systems. These 2 points can be coupled because they go in tandem. Just now we have witnessed the BS4 to BS6 migration. So what is this migration? Some years back, India signed the Paris Climate Agreement Pact. Based on that, we are committed to reduce the pollutant emission levels, and vehicle pollution is the main contributory factor to the overall pollution. So how that can be done, how that can be reduced? By sophisticating the existing engine technology, by optimizing the combustion, by regulating the engine control operations in the more sophisticated manner, and thereby reducing the engine emissions. So that's why we witnessed BS4 to BS6 migration to comply with the regulations which were set by the government agencies. Now this implementation requires involvement of electronic components for precise control and performance enhancements. That's why this drives the growth of automotive electronics in the existing applications and existing vehicle systems. There are some more factors such as increasing safety and security demands. Earlier, we had a mindset such as kitna deti hai, right? But that mindset is changing slightly now. Now we have slightly started thinking that along with kitna deti hai, kya main safe bhi hu? So this is driving the safety and security demands in the vehicles, which calls for increased safety and security applications. Again, this needs involvement of sophisticated electronic systems with corresponding control applications. To name a few, we have anti-lock braking system. Hello, is there any question?
Priyadarshini, please mute your mic. No, she may accidentally opened it. That's why.
Okay, fine, no problem. Okay, so this increasing safety and security demands have some examples. To name a few, there is anti-lock braking system. A couple of years back, government agencies mandated this requirement in vehicles. Again, driver airbag was also mandated a couple of years back, which led to implementation of at least a driver airbag in the vehicle. But right now we can see that most of the vehicles are equipped with more than one airbag, I believe, at least one airbag each for driver and the co-driver. So this has led to increasing safety electronic applications, I should say. Another factor for which is contributing to the growth of automotive electronics implementation is growing interest in comfort, convenience, and luxury features. Now, when we are talking about comfort, convenience, and luxury features, what are those? You might have seen nowadays vehicles are coming with sunroof or a mood lighting, or we can say air purifier or scent dispensers. So these all are luxury features, and we people typically get drawn to these fancy features in the first place rather than safer ones or rather than necessary ones. So unless it is mandated, we will not be pushed to implement these things. So that is why these government regulations is the primary factor which drives the automotive electronics implementation in the today's car systems. Any questions so far? Okay, we can move ahead. Let's talk numbers. Here is a quantification available. How over the time we have seen growth of automotive electronics applications in automotive systems. On y-axis, you can see percentage of vehicle cost. On x-axis, you can see over the time how it has progressed. So today we are standing here. We can see that 35% of the total cost is contributed by the electronic components or electronic control units as on today. It is expected to grow by another factor, and it will reach to 50% by 2030. So I can see pretty promising picture going further, and there would be quite an interesting scenario with multiple applications and plenty of opportunities for people like you and me. So in order to understand that how typical automotive electronic system works, we need to understand the basic anatomy of it. This is the typical control system approach, where the controller is implemented along with the sensor input. The sensor input could be in the open loop, or it could be in the closed loop by taking feedback from the output. This controller further drives the system or actuator which performs the operation for us. There can be reference inputs from user control as well. That reference input or that set point can be compared with the feedback, and if any error is there, that can be mitigated or that can be optimized in the control system application, and that optimized output can be fed to the system and actuator in order to have the better performance. Now, the primary factor in typical automotive electronic system is the sensor. There are multiple types of sensors. One is the rotational sensor, another one is pressure sensor, angular and linear position sensors, temperature sensors, and nowadays we are witnessing some advanced sort of sensors such as camera imaging sensors, radar, lidar, and some of the auxiliary typical sensors also. These all sensors are types of sensors which are currently employed in today's contemporary car. So these are some of the automotive systems application areas from an automotive electronic perspective. The basic one is powertrain. In powertrain electronics, primarily we can go through engine management system, which can be coupled with emission controls. Emission control itself is a separate topic. We will be seeing in detail about engine management system in further slides. Along with this, we have a transmission control, onboard diagnostics, which takes care of which fault is present, which fault is healed. Based on that, some certain decisions are taken within the system, and some certain application can be shut down or can be kept in moderate operations if required. Then for electric vehicles, we have a battery management system. EV drive controls are also there. This EV drive control and battery management system again are separate topics and quite an extensive one. Next one, we can see body and chassis electronics. This body and chassis electronics basically consists of lot of applications. Whichever application is not there in powertrain electronics and falls under general category can be put into body and chassis electronics. Chassis electronics typically deals with steering, suspension control, and partly traction control as well. Body electronics, whereas, deals with other sort of applications such as adaptive lighting control, HVAC control, power window control, automatic wiper control, park assist, adaptive cruise control. Now you can see that some of these features may overlap with another segment. There could be overlapping functionalities or overlapping use cases for multiple applications. Now here, if we briefly talk about power window control, earlier we used to have a handle with which we used to take up the window and open up the window. But nowadays it has been replaced with motors, and user can control that motor with a switch. What can be the possible ways you can think of that this particular application can be automated? Any inputs from you guys?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, there are people asking in the chat box. Can you please reply the questions?
Just a second.
Yes, sir, please.
Oh, so Gaurav is asking about HVAC control. We are going to see that in detail in further slides. we have a anti-roll. There is an anti-roll control, but I have not included in this presentation. But for sure, I'll be happy to explain it to you. We have an anti-lock braking system instead. We will be seeing in detail. Then we have a next generation ADAS system, level 3 ADAS system. Yes, we are going to see that. Anti-theft technology. Yes, you're absolutely right, Debasis. Remote air conditioning. Yes, Samini, you're also right. There is a possibility of remote air conditioning system also. Now, as I was asking that, what can be the possibility about this particular power window control? How it can be evolved? Right now, we have a switch control which drives the motor, with which we can take up the window and open up the window. Now, I can think of one interesting scenario is that we have a voice controlled operations in today's vehicles. Those voice control commands can be integrated with this power window module, and based on that, we can open up or close the window. It's a pretty simple application, but quite a convenient one. Okay. Next one, briefly, we can talk about automatic wiper control. Again, we have a switch which can be used to actuate the wiper motor, which wipes out the dirt or water from the windshield. But automatic wiper control comes into picture along with the rain light sensor, which is placed right on the dashboard near the windshield. If any water is there or any dirt is there on the windshield, the light gets refracted, and based on the light refraction, the output of the sensor changes and it is further fed to the control unit, and that control unit then actuates the wiper motor. This is how the automatic wiper control application can be realized. Next area is safety systems. Quite an important one nowadays. We are witnessing that a lot of vehicles are coming up with increasing safety applications. Some of those vehicles have made to the list, which talks about 5-star ratings or 4-star ratings of safety, which is conducted by NCAP. NCAP is the agency which conducts the crash tests of vehicles, and based on the performance, it gives ratings to that specific vehicle or that specific vehicle platform. Okay, from this safety system application area, we can talk about one or two applications briefly. The first one is airbag deployment control. Just now, we were talking about that driver airbag has been made mandatory. Along with that, some manufacturers have implemented the co-driver airbag as well in order to score some more points in the crash tests conducted by NCAP. And these are pretty helpful in scoring points. Basically, electronic applications have separate weightage in this rating criteria. We can talk about it briefly. Airbag deployment control primarily consists of airbag unit. This airbag control unit takes input from impact sensors. These impact sensors are typically placed just behind the front bumper on the chassis of the vehicle or on the horizontal member of the vehicle. Typically, these sensors are two in number, I believe. And there are a couple of sensors placed right behind the front bumper, and these give outputs to the airbag control unit. Along with that, in case of crash, the G value which is sensed by the impact sensors change drastically and is fed to the airbag control unit. Being safety critical application, it needs verification at another level. It may happen that drastic braking or some false case may trigger the airbag deployment. So to avoid this scenario, this input from the impact sensors which is having a drastic change, is verified with onboard accelerometer, which is placed on the airbag control unit. If these two are met, if these two are satisfying the condition, then only the airbags are deployed. So this is just a backup or a verification mechanism, we can say, in order to avoid false triggering. Now the next one is telematics and ADAS. This is quite an extensive and interesting topic in itself, which is going to be pretty much growing in further times and will have some interesting applications moving ahead. Here, telematics is basically the telecommunication and information coupled together. So the vehicle information which is fetched can be broadcasted wirelessly to the cloud platform that can be stored there over a database, and certain applications or certain services can be triggered based on the user requests, and that can be pushed to the user in order to achieve the final outcome. Now, to name a few, what can be those possibilities? This alerts and notifications application is there. Vehicle has multiple sorts of information, such as at what speed vehicle is running, what is the real-time fuel level, or what is the vehicle location in the real time, what is the braking status, what is the engine coolant temperature, what is the oil level. These all aspects are key aspects from the vehicle information perspective. The telemetry or telematics control unit fetches this all key parameters and broadcasts to cloud wirelessly. It has a GSM module integrated into it. With that, it broadcasts this information. Now, let's say with a mobile application installed in the end user's mobile, if user wants to understand that what is the current fuel level, user can ask for current fuel level. That user request can be sent to the cloud. That cloud further asks to telemetry control unit, or if at all it has the most updated fuel level data, it will simply push this particular data to the mobile application of the user. Accordingly, user can see that what is the current fuel level. Similarly, we have another feature from ADAS, which is driver drowsiness detection. Let's say if a driver is driving for a longer time, it may happen that driver will have a fatigue, or it may have some delay in the responses. The reflexes will be slowing down. So in order to avoid that, this particular feature can be realized with cabin camera. The cabin camera will monitor the driver face in real time, and it will provide it to the corresponding control unit, and it will take informed decision based on the facial recognition or facial expressions of a driver, or pupil dilations of the eye pupil dilations and all. If driver is yawning, or if the driver running time is more, then it can be popped up. A message can be popped up to the driver saying that driver needs to take a break. Another interesting application from the same domain is surround view systems. In this surround view system, we have multiple cameras which are integrated with vehicle. Front camera and rear camera are the typical ones. Along with that, we have a couple of more cameras which are placed right beneath the mirror assemblies. on each side. So these 4 cameras will take real-time images. These images are stitched together, and these stitched images are displayed over the head unit or the bigger display in the vehicle. This will help driver to understand that what are the surroundings, and it will also help driver to park vehicle in congested spaces. So now we are going to see one application from each category a little more in detail. The first one is from the powertrain application. So here you can see this is the typical setup of sensors and actuators which are involved in the engine management system. You can see on the left hand side there are sensors or set point generators, and on the right hand side there are actuators. So accelerator pedal position is the one of the inputs. Throttle valve position, air mass flow, battery voltage, which requires in order to power up the ECU and system itself. We have an intake air temperature, we have engine temperature, we have a degree of knock. There is a separate sensor for it. We have oxygen sensors. There are 2 sensors which I will be explaining in the further slide. We have a crankshaft speed and camshaft position sensor also, which detects the crankshaft position and camshaft position as well. Then we have some CAN communication, we have some fault diagnostics inputs as well. Now let's understand that with these all set of sensors, what exactly is getting driven with engine control unit. Primarily, engine coils and spark plugs are driven. Along with that, we have a fuel injectors. These 2 are key components which we need to understand. So how the typical engine management system looks like, or how it works, we'll see that in detail. So here you can see that there is a throttle position sensor which is placed over here. We have an airflow sensor which is placed here. We have a fuel pressure sensor. Then we have crankshaft speed sensor, which gives us the position of the crankshaft. Here we have a knock sensor. Then we have a temperature sensor. We have a couple of oxygen sensors. This particular thing is nothing but the catalytic converter. This is exhaust part of the vehicle. We are not going to see in detail about the exhaust, but briefly I will talk about this catalytic converter. We have a fuel tank over here from where the fuel is supplied. We have this butterfly valve over here with the throttle position sensors. Let's consider a scenario. Driver presses the acceleration pedal. That acceleration pedal drives this throttle position sensor. This throttle position sensor has the output in terms of voltage. Let's say if driver presses the acceleration pedal more, it will have more voltage. If it presses in a soft manner, it may have reduced voltage. Based on that, the throttle motor which is coupled with the throttle valve actuation is triggered, and this throttle valve opening is decided. Based on this throttle valve opening, the amount of air can be determined. If the throttle valve is opened more, then the amount of air which is getting in is more, and vice versa. Okay, so here this mass airflow sensor is there. This mass airflow sensor determines that what is the amount of air which is being taken in the manifold or in the pipe for the combustion. So along with this, the mass airflow sensor also detects the temperature of the air. It has some sensing, temperature sensing element into it. Based on that, it detects what is the temperature of the air and what is the amount of air. Based on that, in subsequent driving cycles, it can be determined that what should be the amount of fuel injected into the combustion chamber. Now here, let us assume that for one driving cycle, some X amount of air we have into the pipe, and in the proportionate manner, the fuel is also injected. This air fuel mixture is pushed into the combustion chamber. This piston compresses it. This spark plug gets input from ignition coil. This ignition coil is nothing but the primary winding and secondary winding setup, which is driven by the ignition control module. This ignition control module can be realized with the electronic application or with mechanical application also, but nowadays we have more electronic application of ignition control module, which has ignition coil packs, and those ignition coil packs drive the spark plugs. So based on the induced voltage in the secondary coil, the spark plug creates the spark and the air fuel mixture is burnt, and we have the combustion. In the exhaust stroke, this exhaust valve opens up and the exhaust gases are pushed out. Here we have a catalytic converter. This catalytic converter is placed in the exhaust system, which is responsible for reducing the vehicle pollutants. The combustion gases consist of multiple vehicle pollutants such as NOx, nitrogen oxides, carbon, some particulate matter as well. So some of these vehicle pollutants are filtered out in this catalytic converter. We have two oxygen sensors over here. This is called as pre-catalytic converter oxygen sensor, and this one is called as post-catalytic converter oxygen sensor. Now, certainly the amount of output generated by the post-catalytic converter oxygen sensor will be lesser one than the pre-catalytic converter sensor. This oxygen sensor is nothing but the input driven sensor which vehicle pollutants has amount of oxygen concentration into it. The more oxygen amount is there in the vehicle pollutant, it compares it with the ambient ones, and based on that the voltage spike is generated by the oxygen sensors. Based on that based on that voltage spike, the subsequent driving cycle will be governed with the lesser fuel injection or more fuel injection. So this is how the typical engine management system works.
Sir,
We'll have a brief understanding as
Sir?
to how this works.
Sir?
Yes, anyone wants to speak?
Yes, sir. I want to ask that you have written along with the crankshaft speed sensor a TDS system. What is the TDS, sir? Before
Okay,
previous slide, sir. Yes.
This one.
TDC, sir.
It's a top dead center.
Top dead center.
It's a top dead center.
Yes,
yeah.
sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so with this animation, maybe engine management system application can be understood in a simpler manner. Here we can see that this is the engine control module. These are the spark plugs. Ignition control module drives the spark plugs. We have a coil over here. We have an ignition control module over here. This particular setup has the distributor-driven spark system. We may have distributor-less ignition control systems as well, wherein the ignition coil packs replaces the distributor assembly. So here you can see that there is a feedback going. This feedback is going to the ignition control module. Ignition control module controls the firing of the spark plug, and along with that we don't have oxygen sensor feedback over here. Let's assume that we have oxygen sensor feedback as well here. In conjunction with that, there is a mapping in the engine control unit, and with these factors, corresponding mapped factor is utilized in order to determine that for how much time the injectors, fuel injectors, are to be kept opened. That determines how much amount of fuel we need to inject. Okay. Just now we saw that one application from powertrain application area. Now we'll see that one from body electronics application. It's more towards comfort feature, we can say. This is the typical refrigeration cycle I have shown over here. The refrigerant is considered to be flown through these lines. This is the compressor. We have a refrigerant flowing in. The compressor compresses the refrigerant, which gets converted into high pressure and gaseous state, then fed to the condenser. The condenser is nothing but the heat rejector. It rejects the heat and converts the refrigerant from gaseous state to liquid, but still it's in the high pressure state only. How it rejects the heat is with the help of fan over here. Now it is being fed to the dryer. Now dryer here is employed in order to eliminate some water molecules or droplets or some contaminants which are being circulated through these lines, which prevent from damaging the compressor. This refrigerant further is fed to expansion valve. Yes, this expansion valve converts the incoming refrigerant from high pressure side liquid to low pressure side liquid. So here you can see that it is cooled somewhat and it is circulated through this evaporator coil. And you can see as the color concentration grows lighter, you can see that the refrigerant goes on boiling here. This evaporator here absorbs the heat. I need to simplify this by telling that when we turn the automotive AC on, the compressor kicks in first and evaporator also kicks in along with that. And evaporator starts absorbing the heat from the automotive cabin. The absence of heat is nothing but the cooler environment. So how it does is that we have relatively cooler element over here that absorbs the ambient heat and leaves the dry and cold air in the ambient condition. This is further fed to the TXV valve or expansion valve, we can say, which converts the refrigerant into low pressure side, but in the gaseous state. This is further fed to the compressor. Again, the compressor compresses it and the cycle goes on. This is the typical refrigeration cycle. And we have a blower fan over here as well, which blows the air, and through vents it passes out in the automotive cabin on the user face or on user foot based on the mode control switch or the mode which user has set. Okay, so this is the representation of typical HVAC control application, or rather we should say fully automatic temperature control, along with switch panel, which lets user control some inputs through switches. We have inside cabin temperature and we have a outside ambient temperature as well. Along with that, there is a control system application which is written inside it. And along with that, we have some communication modules over here. For the sake of simplicity, we will not discuss this right now. And on the output side, we have a mode control which lets user select through which vent user has to take the airflow. It can be from foot side, it can be from face side. Along with that, user can also select that whether he needs to take fresh air inside or he needs to keep air circulated. Along with that, we have some temperature control flaps as well, which control the temperature of the air as to in reference with user set temperature, and these two factors, inside temperature and outside air temperature. Now we have seen a couple of applications from powertrain and body domain so far. We will see one from the safety electronics domain. So here we will discuss about anti-lock braking system, which is a safety application. Here you can see some of the key components, such as we have a wheel speed sensor placed at each wheel. We have a toothed sensor ring, which helps to understand that at what vehicle speed independent wheel is being rotated. We have a control unit. We have here hydraulic modulator, which controls the master cylinder and slave cylinders. We have hydraulic lines, and we have a master cylinder over here. This is the typical representation of the anti-lock braking system from the control system's perspective. We have 4 wheel speed inputs. We have a brake light switch. We have a ignition voltage as an input. We have a battery voltage as an input. And we are driving corresponding hydraulic pumps or cylinders. Now, in order to understand that how ABS works, we need to look at this particular figure over here. The panic braking situation happens when driver realizes that the vehicle is about to get hit with some obstacle. The panic braking leads to locking of wheels. The locking of wheels is nothing but the wheel rotation stops. The driver will not be able to steer the vehicle in some desired direction, which may lead to skidding of vehicle, and eventually the vehicle hits the obstacle, which may have unfortunate mishap or accidental scenario. Now, the ABS ECU lets user have flexibility to press the brake pedal as hard as possible, but it may not take the primary user input completely. Instead, it will intervene at some specific time intervals. It will prevent the wheel locking, and that locking will further lead to steering ability of the driver. Driver will be able to steer the vehicle, which helps in preventing the accident. Now, another application from telematics or ADAS. Now, further slides will talk about some futuristic applications consisting of telematics or ADAS applications. So, as we briefly talked about in the earlier slide, the typical architecture or ecosystem of telematics goes like this. The vehicle information is collected using CAN, LIN, or GPS communication buses. That information is fed to the ECU. ECU, here we can specifically say telematics control unit. That telematics control unit wirelessly broadcasts this information to cloud, where a database would be there. This database stores this vehicle related information specifically for that particular user or for that particular vehicle. There can be segregation. Huge amount of data can be stored with this. Of course, this can be free or this can be subscription based. For the sake of simplicity, we'll not talk about it. Maybe briefly we can touch upon it. Right now we have some moderate features which are freely available, but some certain features are there which are subscription based. Okay, so if user wants to have some certain specific alert from the vehicle, let's say fuel level, real-time fuel level, user will initiate the fuel level request in order to understand that what is the current fuel level. This is the user request initiated. This goes to the cloud. If cloud has the most recent fuel level for that specific vehicle, then it will simply respond with the answer, and that is displayed over the mobile application to the end user. If the cloud does not have the most recent information, then it will ask for that information to the TCU. TCU will fetch it from the vehicle information and will give it to the user. Of course, it will lead to some time delay, but it can be the tolerable time delay, we can say, maybe to the extent of 10 to 15 seconds. Okay. So these are the telematics services. Earlier we saw that what is the telematics ecosystem. Now this one is the services which can be spinned off with the telematics applications. This one is the location-based services. Earlier we were seeing that there were some location-based services or location-based applications were there, such as Find My Car, or maybe stolen vehicle tracking, or Navigate to My Car. These are some of the location-based services. Some of the emergency services, such as in the event of crash or in the event of emergency, the onboard GSM module can place a distress call or can send the message along with the latest GPS coordinates and some distress messages to the backup call center or the data center, we should say, and further actions can be taken on it. Here, nowadays, smartphones can be integrated with the vehicle telematics unit with Android Auto, or I'm not aware about the iOS applications. I'm only aware about the Android Auto.
Apple
CarPlay. Okay. Okay, thanks for that. Okay. One another interesting aspect is remote vehicle interaction. Somebody rightly pointed out there earlier that remote AC request can be initiated along with remote AC. We may have remote lighting, or we may have remote engine activation as well. But very few applications I have seen with the remote engine application or remote engine activation, as engine is the primary component which drives the vehicle and which can lead to stalling of the vehicle. Usually people tend to avoid remote engine activation. Now the head unit or the displays which are integrated in the vehicles currently are pretty smart one. Those are internet enabled. We can browse some information through those displays without having to operate our mobiles. Of course, this would be the distraction in my opinion, but still this is there as a feature. We have another spin-off from the telematics services, which is fleet management. We have multiple vehicles. This typically talks about the commercial vehicle operations, wherein multiple vehicles can be managed as in the single fleet. With the fleet management, the driver behavior can be monitored. Certain specific driver can be assigned to some specific vehicle, and that driver behavior can be recorded with the vehicle data which is collected for that specific vehicle. And based on that, some serviceability conditions or some diagnostic conditions or predictive maintenance for that particular vehicle can be realized. So these are some application areas for telematics, I should say. This is one specific use case which we can consider briefly, which is Find My Car. We have a telematics unit over here. This telematics unit interacts with the cloud. We have a mobile application which is accessible to the end user. error messages or car location requests can be placed or can be received in the mobile application. The typical flow diagram for this particular use case should be like this. If the ignition is on, user will tap on the Find My Car button on the mobile application. It will wait for some defined time while the car location is being fetched. If the car location is readily available with the cloud, it will respond with the latest GPS coordinates, and user will be provided with the latest location. Upon receiving that, user can navigate to that car location. If the location is not the latest one, it will be fetched from the car location. This opens up another interesting possibility where the ignition is off, vehicle is off. In that case, what will happen? In that case, simply cloud will trigger the application service. That signal will go to the telematics unit. The telematics unit will be in the sleep mode. Upon receiving this particular request, it will wake up for some defined time. It will fetch that information which is last known to telematics unit, as telematics unit is hardwired with other electronic control units which are there in the vehicle. It must have the last known latest GPS coordinates. It will respond with that, and further it will be passed on to the mobile application.
Sir?
Okay. Okay, yes, tell me.
Sir, how this technology differ from electric vehicle?
This is independent of the electric vehicle technology. It can be implemented for the IC engine vehicle as well as for electric vehicle, both. If I'm not wrong, you're asking that this particular Find My Car application can be implemented in the electric vehicle or not, right?
Yes, sir, and HVAC control also.
HVAC control.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. So there is not much difference, I should say, but there would be a difference when the compressor will come into picture, because compressor is coupled with the engine in conventional IC engine vehicles. So the compressor engagement and disengagement will be in the conventional manner. Whereas in the electric vehicle, we have a separate compressors which are electronically controlled, which do not require engine coupling or motor coupling, I should say. So accordingly, we can have a separate control system implementation for electronic vehicle HVAC application and IC engine application. But typically, the end result would remain same. Have I answered the question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just a second. Okay. So now that we are discussing about telematics and ADAS features or services, we need to understand that to what extent the autonomy can be achieved in the vehicle. As we progress from level 0 to level 4, or as the color progresses from blue to green, we can say that the degree of automation increases. Level 0 is the complete manual control of vehicle operations. Level 1 has a certain specific single automotive application which is automated. For the sake of example, we can consider only acceleration and deceleration can be automated without, regardless of the accelerator pedal position input from the user. Level 2 has more than one, or I should say, a couple of automotive applications which are automated. Along with acceleration and deceleration, we have a steering control over here in level 2 autonomy. So if I need to map this levels of autonomy, I should say Tesla Autopilot in some way map to level 2 autonomy, because it lets you sit back to some extent and relax, while it takes care of steering control and automatic acceleration and deceleration also by means of autopilot. However, it needs the driver monitoring, and wherever the intervention is required, the driver should be ready to intervene at any point of time. We have very few, or rather I should say, we don't have many vehicles which comply with the level 3, at least not in the production right now. I believe Audi A8 has level 3 autonomy, but due to some legislative requirements, this is not yet on road to that larger extent. But for level 3 autonomy, I should say the vehicle is capable to perform operations with informed decisions based on the real-time data sensed from the surroundings, maybe with radars or lidars or ultrasonic sensors, or maybe some surrounding vehicles are there or not, some obstacles are there or not. Based on that, it may help driver with automated overtaking, or maybe park assist, or features like that. Level 4 autonomy is the fully automated vehicle. We have some operators having level 4 autonomy, but those are mostly ride-hailing services. To name a few, we have Waymo, which is under trials. We have another one called Zoox, which is a high ride-hailing service, which is owned by Amazon. But those are not being used as of now. They are still under trials. But one level of level 4 autonomy they have achieved for sure, wherein the vehicle is capable to perform all the safety, driving and monitoring functions on its own with the help of onboard sensors, and actuators need not have driver intervention. So driver just have to sit back and relax. Only it has to provide where driver needs to go, and that destination can be fulfilled with the level 4 automated vehicle. Here you can see that as we move from level 0 to level 4, we have increased number of X-by-wire technology, or X-by-wire applications, I should say. When we say that X-by-wire, it is nothing but earlier mechanical linkages of automotive systems are replaced with electrical ones, or electromechanical ones, I should say. If the electrical one fails, then mechanical linkages are there as a backup. But in level 4 vehicles, the mechanical linkages will not be there at all. That's what my understanding is. To name few examples, in X-by-wire, we have seen throttle-by-wire application in earlier slide, precisely in engine management system, wherein it was shown that accelerator pedal position sensor was there, and the throttle valve position sensor was also there. So to briefly discuss what is throttle-by-wire, in order to understand what is X-by-wire technology, we can talk about a scenario wherein the driver presses the accelerator pedal. That accelerator pedal changes the position of the needle, which is there placed inside the accelerator pedal position sensor assembly. It changes the voltage output. That voltage output is fed to the motor, which is placed at the other end of the wire. That motor is coupled with the butterfly valve. That butterfly valve thereby gets actuated based on the voltage input which is being fed to it by means of pressing the acceleration pedal. Throttle valve position sensor is coupled with the motor. That sensor reads by what amount the motor has undergone the rotation, and it feeds back that reading, or it feeds back that voltage signal back to the engine control unit, and thereby we have optimized air intake in order to have the proper combustion in the subsequent driving cycles. So this is just one use case which I explained. The purpose of this was to understand that how throttle by wire works. Acceleration pedal, sorry, somebody was speaking. Yeah, tell me. Okay, I think okay, we have few questions. Why level 3 is more challenging than other in India? Because the legislation power, or will it implemented with next decade? To answer this question, level 3 autonomy seems to be a distant dream considering current Indian automotive scenario, because we don't have proper infrastructure available. Even in US or in some European countries, we have the level 3 vehicles under trial. Even those are not being realized in the proper matured production platforms. Okay, Jesh is asking, can we say that we are still behind to accept the autonomous vehicle system? Yes, we are falling behind relative to the European Union countries and some Western countries, I should say. But let's be optimistic. If infrastructure gets improved, then for sure we will be there. No problem. You will be able to travel in the level 3 autonomous vehicle, Josh. Okay, moving further with the presentation. Considering the current situation of COVID-19 or the pandemic, to what extent it has impacted the automotive sector? This is the latest data from Society of Indian Automotive Manufacturers. As we can see, in the fiscal year 2020, there were some 2,800 units sold. I believe the data is in lakhs, so don't be misunderstood with this data. So we can see that there is a reduction, a little reduction, I should say, from the previous fiscal year to the current fiscal year. The same trend we can witness for other vehicle categories as well, three-wheelers as well. You can see over here for two-wheelers also, the sales have declined by some percentage factor. Again, we have a decline in commercial vehicles as well. So the SIAM report says that total production in fiscal year 2021 is dropped by 14%. So that's quite a good number, we should say. But again, here for passenger vehicles, all the numbers are not included. To be precise, if I have read correctly, Tata Motors numbers are not included over here. So these numbers may not be the latest one, but those are there available on the SIAM website. However, this is not the only challenge which is being faced by the automotive sector due to current pandemic situation. We have an interesting scenario of semiconductor chip shortage. Increasing demand of semiconductor chips or electronic components by the automotive sector has led to the automotive chip shortages. Now, along with automotive sector, some other sectors are also contributing to the increased demands, but the supply is not to that extent. So that has created the shortage, which has impacted the cut down in the production. Just to give you the example to what extent it has impacted, General Motors has declared that they may face loss of $2 billion because of the semiconductor chip shortage. So this is the interesting scenario. We should say that to what extent electronics has penetrated into the automotive sector. 2 billion is not a small number. Okay, but the situation is not going to remain the same. Here, this next slide talks about the growth of ADAS applications or growth of automotive applications by 2030. Currently, we have $27 billion number as of now, but it is projected to be reaching to $83 billion by 2030 through the factor of 11.9% CAGR, compounded growth. So I see pretty optimistic picture over here. You and me, we are going to have many opportunities going forward, many interesting applications we will be witnessing, and the picture looks promising. Maybe I'll see some of you in the domain who can be my colleagues as well, if possible. So the picture is good, and the situation is for sure optimistic. Okay. So that brings me to the conclusion of my presentation. Now I'll be taking few questions. Let me go through the chat box. I'll explain about some futuristic project. Although I'm in CSE, what would I clear to clear my path? Okay. For computer science guys, I should say that typical automotive electronic applications require software development. That software development can be done in many ways. It has development methodology from the controller side. It has a development methodology from the integration side as well. So for sure, computer science graduates can have better future in automotive electronic development applications as well. It can be from validation side and it can be from development side as well. Some more questions I'm scrolling through. Aish Kant is asking about what about the electronic parking brake, traction control system, auto hold. Yes, these are some of the safety applications which gets overlapped with some ADAS features. Those can be realized with components and actuators, which I have explained earlier in the anti-lock braking system slide. So these applications are spin-off. These can be realized in tandem with wheel speed sensors and corresponding brake actuators by means of hydraulic cylinder actuation for each brake pedal or each brake assembly, I should say. Rain sensing wipers, yes, I have explained this already. What are the safety benefits can be achieved from the automatic door lock system? Automatic door lock system, my understanding of automatic door lock system is that it depends on the vehicle speed input currently. If the vehicle exceeds certain specific vehicle speed threshold, the doors get locked automatically. Which prevents opening of the door in the vehicle running condition, thereby having safer ride. I believe that answers the question. anti-roll control application involves onboard accelerometer input. That accelerometer input can be considered in order to prevent the rolling of the vehicle. There are three axes basically: yaw, roll, and pitch. So the rolling mitigation application can be realized by means of accelerometer input, and if it exceeds some threshold, then we can have braking on the opposite sides of the vehicle as well. Okay, the plug-in hybrid concept itself is quite an extensive topic, but to give you the brief understanding of plug-in hybrid concept, hybrid vehicle architecture has two power plants, primarily motor and engine, both. The final output is determined based on the degree of hybridization and some vehicle control strategies as to in what conditions the vehicle is being driven. In city conditions, the degree of hybridization would be different. In highways, degree of hybridization could be different. It can be user controlled or it can be static one. Just to give you example, there are some degree of hybridization such as mild hybrid, strong hybrid. I'm not able to recall another one, but these are the ones to name few. Okay, I think
Sir?
I have covered pretty much.
Sir, I have a question.
Okay,
Sir,
any other? Yeah, tell me.
sir what could we do to save IC engine cars in future?
Okay. Interesting question, I should say. In my opinion, diesel engines may not have the promising feature as it is having right now. Although the gasoline powered vehicles would be there, but to some extent, diesel engines would be there for some heavy commercial vehicles only. IC engine cars are going to be there for some time, at least in my opinion. I should say by 2030 we may have IC engine cars. Typical vehicle lifetime is 15 years. In India, we use one vehicle more than that, around 20 to 25 years, let's say. So once all these vehicles are phased out, I should say by 2040 we should have greater number of electric vehicles, or at least hybrid ones, I should say.
Thank you,
Does
sir.
that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Sir, can't we
Okay.
use our electrical vehicle in public transportation purpose, and for only performance or racing purpose we can use our IC engine cars?
It can be realized provided we have a matured electric powertrain which is capable enough to pull heavy loads. Right now, we don't have the matured production technology in terms of EV for commercial vehicles. The work is still being done on that front, but for sure, we have matured productionable technology for small passenger cars. But let's be optimistic. We may have that in future. Okay, so that's all from my end, guys. I wish you to stay safe in current situation. Don't get your car out and go on for a ride in current situation. Stay safe, stay healthy.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for answering
Thank
such
you.
questions, and thank you for the webinar. So we conclude the today's webinar. So if anyone having any questions, okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you all for attending. Have a good day.
Thanks, Oratis team. Thanks, Ananya,
Thank you, sir.
for having me.
Thank you so much, sir. We are privileged to have you, sir.
Thank you.